All right, welcome to another episode of Owning the Goal. This is a podcast that helps you take charge of your sales and life success. It's been created and hosted by myself, Brian McFarland, and I and my guests will share our insights and inspiration, myself from my 40 plus year selling career as an individual seller and a sales leader. Like you, we're more than just salespeople, which is why this just isn't a podcast about sales. We'll talk about other passions, books, sports, music, mental fitness, physical fitness, and how they all relate to hitting our goals, because success in sales is success in life. And welcome back, listeners, because today I am so very lucky to have a very, very, very accomplished man, a marathon runner that I've already found out. And today we're going to dive into a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure you as a listener too, if you're listening to Owning the Goal, of how to actually set and achieve goals that matter, whether for you or for your company. With that being said, and coming to us from sunny Los Angeles, let me flip the mic to you and thank you in advance so much for your time, Jessper, to tell us about yourself, your company, and how you can bring value to both individuals and corporations.
Absolutely. Brian, good morning from Southern California. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation today. And for me, hi everyone. My name is Jessper Maquindang. I am the owner of Family Management Consulting, and I am in the world of company culture. I really enjoy helping leaders and managers build stronger teams because that strong sense of teamwork, that has an impact on productivity, engagement, and the bottom line. And I help managers and leaders through team building activities, coaching, and leadership development assessments. And when you put all that together, that really does build a more cohesive team and a better sense of leadership within that team.
Yeah, no doubt, Jesper. And having, just in our preamble, talking about as you as a company culture as consultant, there's no question that just with having you and your teams get into a company and just help them from a cultural basis can be incredibly helpful. So as I was going through your site, I would love you as the expert to talk about the types of benefits that you bring a company based on all the years of you've been doing this, and then also sort of the statistics of what across the industry of what are some of the challenges that those companies face.
Absolutely. So let's go through the process of how I help people. So the first phase out of a three-phase process is that leadership development, because when people have a better self-awareness of where they're doing well and where they can improve, when they take all that information together, that really gives them an opportunity to see where they can grow or where they can leverage what they're already doing well. And there's also a saying, if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. So when you develop that leadership awareness, you're really giving yourself a real chance to really make an impact first within yourself and within others. Now, the second phase of my process is forming an HR strategy, because when people hire, we need to realize that, yes, that really does make a real difference who we bring in. Instead of the traditional way of finding people who fit that skill set exactly, just like a puzzle piece, we need to look at culture fit, because we want people who align with our values, align with our mission, align with our vision. Because if we're hiring people just for the skill set, there's a missing human element where if there's a disconnect, people might not see just the long-term durability of what they're trying to work for. But on the other hand, when you do find people who stand for what you believe in, you'll see just a stronger sense of engagement and loyalty. And then the third phase is team building, because once you have a team, it doesn't just magically work itself out. So, for example, when you bring people in, it's not like you could just sit back and wait and just see things work along just well. You have to be intentional about how you really onboard and train your team. Because when you keep everyone on the same page, that gives everyone the opportunity to work better together. So, for example, when it comes to team building activities, we see traditional games. I mean, I can bring games and other assessments that can really give everyone on that team the opportunity to see how they can work better together. Because again, we have to be intentional about this team building. If we leave people aside and assume it's going to work itself out, that's going to turn into silos. But on the other hand, if we really put in the effort to put everyone on the same page, you'll see just a higher level of engagement and enthusiasm for what everyone's working toward. So that's the process. And when you put all that together, that really does build a culture where people know what they're looking forward to. And that really makes a difference in how everyone's working together.
Yeah, it really does. And I love what you're saying there. And we're going to get back to and have some fun with, I love the be intentional portion and games. We're going to get back to that in a second. But forgive me for not opening the floor to tell us about you. Tell us about Jessper. Tell us about growing up. How'd you get into this field? What do you like to do? I always like to ask, like, what do you do on weekends? So just, take the floor as before you became the success that you are. What was life like, and how did you wind up in this position?
Thank you. So let's go back in time. There is something that has really defined my childhood, and it's growing up with asthma. And growing up with something like that, it really does set the tone for how people see you. And growing up, when people know you have something like asthma, they lower their expectations of you. And it brought a sense of concern for my own family. I just remember when I was growing up with asthma, my parents would tell me, stay indoors, stay away from pollen, stay away from dust, stay away from fur. It's a dangerous world out there. But over time, I realized, is this something I want? It reminds me of the image. You see the kid just looking out the window, and all the other kids are having so much fun. They're playing soccer, they're running around, and you see the kid just locked in their room, just looking out, wishing what could have been. And I realized, thinking about that image, is that something I want? And then I realized, not really. So what I did growing up, for some reason, the idea of running a marathon just came to mind. I was just inspired by such a major goal, and told myself, someday I'm gonna run that 26.2 miles to prove I'm capable. And that was a strong why for me. And I took it step by step. Of course, I didn't do those 26.2 miles overnight. I put on my training shoes and then took a few steps just outside, and then upgraded it to maybe a mile, upgraded to 2 miles, signed up for a 5K, and then worked my way up. Of course, there were challenges. Then a 10K, a half marathon, and then it was time. I put in all the time and effort, signed up for my first marathon. It was the San Diego Rock and Roll in 2014. I was absolutely nervous. It's my first time doing this. It was 7 in the morning. I looked out, cold day. I looked out in the trail. What in the world did I just sign up for? This is a full marathon. But I reminded myself, Jessper, trust your training. You already put in time and effort to get this far. It's too late to turn back. And over time, once I crossed that start line, I just reminded myself, trust your training. I put in time, I put in effort. I got halfway, started feeling the pain, started feeling the pressure, kept going, pushing myself, reminding myself just to keep pushing. Mile 20, mile 21, could feel the pain. But I remember a quote from Martin Luther King. I'm paraphrasing, but if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. So it just reminded me to keep going. And then mile 24, of course, the pain, pressure just started to increase. But I reminded myself, again, trust your training, keep going. I put in so much time and effort. And then when I finally crossed the 26.2 mile marker, I just felt a great sense of joy. And it just reminded me, all that time and effort, it was worth it, because it really just gave me the opportunity to show myself that, yes, I was capable to really set a big goal for myself to go from asthma to marathon. And that really just inspired my journey of what I do in life. So as I look at my journey, I realize it is this sense of leadership development, personal growth, seeing how far I can push myself. And then that's really informed my decision making. So when it comes to leadership development, my career is in supervising employees and really seeing them grow. And with that inspiration of what I've been through, I want to see other people grow. Of course, I'm not running around telling people to run 26.2 miles. That's still a lot. If they want to do it, I'll let them take that step by step. But it's really that sense of personal growth that I want to see in other people. And that's really what informs me in my decision making.
Oh, I love that. Now, couple questions there. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is some obstacle to overcome. And I remember those, you just brought back such a flash. I remember those ads. They were both in print. You're a lot younger than me, but then they were also on television where it was the boy who was in his bed and his parents telling him not to go outside and he was looking out the window. So kudos to you, man. And my compassion for how that must have been. But for you to turn it around, that's so incredible. How old were you when you did the marathon?
I'd say I was in my mid 20s.
Okay, okay. Now, what? And I did. This is all about you, but I'll replicate the feeling that when I crossed the marathon line, I did one. It was in Richmond, Virginia. I always wanted to run the San Diego one, but I just couldn't put it together on a timeline. I do remember as I crossed that line and my family was there, I remember when I looked up and I started crying that I said, sounds like you said the same thing. There's nothing in this world that I can't do because I just did what was the impossible to me, and certainly you with asthma did the same thing. So again, congratulations. Now, how did you, now another marathon type goal is you decided, incredibly, to hang out your own shingle and decide that you're going to go into business yourself, right? Which is no easy task. So I guess walk me through the process, coming out of school or whatnot. Did you work somewhere else? And then when did you make the decision and talk to us and the listeners about what that transition was like, how it felt? Was it scary? And then how did it all work out for you?
Absolutely. So for me, yes, I grew up in the corporate world 9 to 5. And then I really gained a lot of experience in really supervising teams and leading people. And then when the pandemic hit, we were seeing more people working remotely and hybrid. And this isn't really a new trend. Telecommuting has been around for years, but it's really intensified the level that we're seeing of people either working from home or outside of the office. And I realized that's an interesting opportunity because people have been asking me, Jesper, this new world of people being away from the office, how do we navigate this? How do leaders navigate this? And I realized this is a really good opportunity to step in and support those managers who are trying to understand this world of what it's like for people not to be in the same room together. And when I jumped in, of course, I was nervous because I grew up in a structured world, and now this opportunity to do everything on my own, a little nervous. But I realized, based on the experiences I already had, and the questions and the answers I had for leaders and managers in navigating this world, I really put together different frameworks, different perspectives, and different ideas, organize it in a way to really help me understand the more effective way of helping other people go through this. And I realized with all this together, I really have a system in place that really can help other people understand how they can lead in this world of hybrid and remote. And not just that, but when we look at team building in general, the world is becoming more complex because When we look at the history of technology, we look at the wheel and the spear. That's already been invented. But as time goes on, technology becomes much more advanced. So we look at self-driving cars, so much more advanced. We look at artificial intelligence, much more advanced today. Blockchain technology, much more advanced today. So the reason I bring this up is because as we navigate these complex challenges, we need the support and guidance of other people because it's becoming more difficult for one person to accomplish things on their own. So when we look at advanced technologies, yes, this sense of teamwork, it's becoming just all the more important. And my work really encourages and embraces that idea of building stronger teamwork because that's what we need as we move forward in the future when everything's becoming much more complex and sophisticated.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, great answer there. When you do you come from where is this DNA of wanting to be an entrepreneur from? Does that come from your family? Was it something you carved out the own path? Because it's a big risk, right? You're probably making good money in the corporate world, and it's safe, and it's all this stuff. So I guess I'd love to know about what was that breaking point. I haven't been able to do it yet, so I haven't, and I'm a lot older than you. So what was that like, and where did it really come from for you?
It's very interesting because, yes, growing up in the 9 to 5, that sense of structure and just growing up at a young age, I had actually never imagined this idea of starting a business because just always imagined just working for just another company, another corporation, because that's just a viewpoint that I was just used to. But growing up, I was just studying the work of successful people and people who are really making an impact and a difference in the world. And the what I saw as a common theme among these people are that they really pursued their dream. They really ran for what they wanted to stand for. They wanted this sense of purpose. They wanted this sense of significance. And when they lived it, that's where they found the greatest sense of joy. And I realized coming from the 9 to 5 world, looking forward, I really did feel this strong sense of purpose, this strong sense of significance. And I realized if I leave that behind, I might feel unfulfilled. But when I realize I can create something of my own and pursue it, that's just going to bring a greater sense of joy. So again, growing up, I had no idea I would get into it, and I was nervous jumping into it. But when I realized what I might be leaving behind, that's a risk that wasn't worth it. So I really wanted to jump in, leap in, because on the other hand, that's the risk that was worth it for me. Because on the other side, that greater sense of joy, enthusiasm, and purpose, that's really what lights me up.
All right. And how long has it been since you hung out your own shingle?
It's been a couple of years. It's been such a great learning journey, and I'm still looking forward to learning more.
When you set goals for saying, okay, I'm going to resign from the current position that you have, I guess walk me through what you're the master of saying, here's my goals, here's my objectives, here's the strategies I'm going to get to. So what did you look at and say, when I open this company, here's what I'm going to achieve in the first year, second year, and then down the road?
Yeah. So for me, I've been fairly organized. I've kept journals and planners and organizers. And for me, at first, I just set my big why. I really wanted to really support leaders and managers in the work they do, in bringing that sense of engagement and productivity in building their team. That was my first why. And then over time, the next was the process, and then figuring out, the different phases of what I wanted to do to put it together. And then the third part was the details, the finer details, and what that looked like. So pretty much for me, it was reverse engineering from the big vision to the finer details. And that's what brought me to where I am today.
That's great. And you feel like you've achieved the goals that you set out to, and thus built a thriving business. So I love that. And what would you say? And then I want to dive into some real world applications. What would you say? Where do you see yourself with this company in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's an excellent question. And for me, it's really growing it. I really want to make a significant impact and reach more leaders and managers in the work they do in supporting their efforts in really helping other people grow. So for me, it's really just that uh, impact in reaching more leaders. So finding more leaders to really build that following and really support their needs. And
Okay.
it just reminds me of a value that that metaphor where there's a story of a professor, and this is going back to an earlier point of setting goals, where he was talking to his class, and he takes a he has three elements: jar, or he has a jar, and then he has rocks, smaller stones, and fine sand. And then what he did with his students, he poured the sand, and it filled halfway. And then when he put the bigger rocks, it wouldn't fit. And then he showed the students that visual. And then what he did next is he emptied out the jar, and then starting over, he put the big rocks first, and then the smaller rocks, and then the sand, and it all seemed to fit together. And he showed the students, based on that example, it's really putting the big things first. And then when you put the small parts, everything fits together. So when it comes to prioritizing our goals, focus on the big why, and then work toward the finer details later.
I love that. I love that. See, you're getting your listeners. You're getting solid gold stuff for no cost here. But that's one of the goals, because then you're going to be enticed to hire Jessper. So talk to me. Very curious, and you don't have to name the names of the companies if you don't want. But a fellow seller, right? I've had great coaches, and I would say I've been basically taught, and to this day, about a good 50%. Now I'm an individual contributor, right? So I don't own my company like you, but you're the lead salesperson, right? Upwards of 50% of our time should be spent prospecting, right? Otherwise, you're not going to land new clients. So two questions there. Do you remember how you got your first client, and then how do you consistently prospect for new business yourself?
Absolutely. So the first part is pretty much people you know, those warm leads, warm outreach. That really does help, because starting cold, it is scary for a lot of people, and it is a little bit more challenging. But when you reach out to people within your network, that makes it a little bit easier, because when people already know you, it's already that warm outreach that makes it easier for you. And the second part, I would really recommend networking. Always, always network. Someone once told me, you want to build the well beforehand, because before you need the water, because when you have the systems and foundation in place, over time, that'll really support you. So you want to make sure people know you before they need you. And it really does help really forming that networking foundation for yourself. So always network, go to networking events, specifically network events that are relevant to the work you do. Because for example, if you go to a networking event that's in a completely different industry, if you want to learn, that's absolutely fine, but it might be a little bit more challenging, because the needs are different there. But for example, if you're a coach in the world of well-being, you want to go to events, conferences, seminars that are related to that field, because if you go to events that are related to something completely different, like electrical engineering, it might be a little bit more challenging finding the people that fit that need. So look for relevant events that are specifically attached to the work that you do.
Oh, I love that. Now, drilling down, can you tell us a story of how you landed your first client and what that?
Oh my goodness. So yes, it was through someone I knew, and then the opportunity when they invited me. So this was a great opportunity, because the venue was on a cruise ship, and that was just very exciting, because the opportunity for anyone to train on a cruise, I mean, just the cruise itself, just going on. That's exciting. But the opportunity for you to teach what you know, what you enjoy, what you like, and sharing with other people that experience, what they're looking for, when that alignment meets, that really makes it exciting. So, for an opportunity for me to really teach what other people wanted to learn on a cruise ship, that was just very exciting for me.
So your first working job was training a company's employees as they were on a cruise ship?
That that was just such a great opportunity.
Wow. Well, talk about a captive audience, right?
It was such a great opportunity.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I want to go back to the games because I remember, and I was talking to an old colleague of mine, and one thing I remember is we took a business trip down to Florida, and it was companies don't do this much anymore, but I think there was like 200 of us down there, and I've been through a lot of team building games and whatever, but one of the most impactful ones was we divided up into teams of six, and we had to, it was all on the beach. So we had to do a whole bunch of, with no tools, just our hands, a whole bunch of exercises in the sand, building sandcastles, creating logos, doing this. So what are some good examples of some fun games that are really impactful, and then not just being fun, how do they help corporations?
Absolutely. So, several ones I've had. I've done an activity where I have a jigsaw puzzle. Uh, and then what I do is when I break up the teams, they won't get to see the puzzle itself. The pieces will be upside down, and they'll try to put that together because that adds a new level of challenge. Because when you have a group trying to see what they can do without seeing a clear outcome, and at the end, when they actually do see a result, that really gives a better understanding of what it means to work together and strive for the same goal. That's one activity. Another activity I've had is where you have uh, there's something called PowerPoint karaoke. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's an impromptu kind of speak up where where the host will create a PowerPoint presentation, uh, not share it with the group, but they'll present it, and then as a group they'll work together to figure out how they can present it. It really gets people thinking on their feet. It's like an impromptu speech, but with a PowerPoint where they're not given the slides beforehand. It really gives them the opportunity to really think quickly and present, the various charts that are up there. And when they work together, it really gives them the opportunity to see how they can mesh, and then seeing that overall goal at the end. So that's an opportunity. And when it comes to other opportunities, I mean, in the past, there are some kinds of activities that you want to avoid. For example, trust fall. There isn't much value just seeing people fall over the place. I mean, nowadays that could be an OSHA violation, but uh, with the trust fall, it doesn't really bring that sense of team building. It's just people just tripping all over the place. So when you want to form a team building activity, you want to make sure that it really gets a team working together toward a defined goal. It reminds me of those activities where you're given different materials and you're building a tower. It's those uh, kinds of activities where people are really working together to see how they can use their creativity and innovation to build something as a team. So look for those activities where there is a goal that people can work toward. And bonus points if those activities are related to the values of your organization, extra credit there. So, for example, if you're trying to promote creativity, if you have an activity that really does embrace that, kudos to you. So look for those.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Um, so walk me through, like, okay, so what I noted to you, in diving into your website, I told you right before we got on the mic here, one thing that so impressed me, to be honest, was there was a form intake, if you will, that was really extensive, and I went through it as if I was like the CEO of my current company I worked at, because I noticed, like for any company, we can all get better, right? We're all lifelong learners. So what I thought was incredible is you had the behavioral elements certified guide, and you, as far as I could tell from it, that you would go into this document, and this is what I did, and you would fill out this extensive questionnaire. It was very extensive, but it was really well thought out, ranking things that you did best to not as best, right? I won't say worst, and how you would improve that organization. So tell me, had I finished the document, what's the process of you get that intake form, and then how, because I want you to promote your business to the listeners, so you get this very well thought out intake form, and then walk me through, you get that document, had I finished it yesterday, what do you do, and then how does the process work, and then let's say then we agree to work together, what does that look like?
Absolutely. First off, I really like how you said we're all lifelong learners, because when it comes to personal development and leadership, that's really where that stands. And for behavioral elements, thank you for going through that. Yes, I do recommend completing that as well. So with the idea of behavioral elements, very valuable assessment, because what it does, when we look at the other assessments in the world, they tend to measure personality. This person is calm, this person is organized, this person is relaxed. Now, that's a great start, but what it's missing, the missing element from personality-based assessments, is that these are observable characteristics, things we can see on the the outside. But now the question is, what happens if we understand people from the inside? And that's the value that behavioral elements brings, because when it comes to decision making, the assessment really gives us the opportunity to really understand what drives our behavior on the inside, not just what we see on the outside. So, for example, Jessper, he's calm and relaxed. Again, that's an observable behavior, but on the inside, how does someone make decisions? So, behavioral elements is based on 4 different characteristics based on the natural elements. So, the first one is air, fire, earth, and water. And as we look at these elements, again, these are based on how we make decisions. So the first one, air. These are the people who are driven by creativity. As the metaphor goes, they just love throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. They embrace their creativity. They really embrace just how far they can push the limits and see how their own innovation really expresses itself. So again, air is that creative force. Next is fire. These are the people with a competitive drive. For them, winning really brings a lot of value. So for example, a fire, if you give a sales agent a goal of 50 calls per day, they'll look at you and say, Jessper, just 50? Count me in for 100. Let's go. It's really that force of really pushing the limits, going above and beyond. So that competitive spirit, that's the fire. Next, these are the earth. And these are the people who prefer structure. They understand that when things flow smoothly, everything tends to just work out well. So there's order, there's structure, everything's easy to reference and understand. And that's where these people find stability. So that is the earth. And lastly, water. And these are the people who are driven to bond. They value the relationships that they have. They're very people-oriented. They really, when it comes to decision making, they involve other people in what they're trying to strive toward. Because without that sense of inclusion, what's the point of moving forward as a team? That's really what they value, those relationships. So again, Air, these are the people who value their creativity. Fire, these are the competitive people who really, really enjoy winning. Earth, these are the people who value structure and organization because once that's set in place, it just makes life easier for them. And water, these are the people who value the people and relationships in their life. And when you put it all together, again, it's understanding that how we make decisions. So for me, once a team, a leader, or an organization completes their individual assessment, I'll go in and I'll train them again, taking a deeper dive on what this means, and then we'll go through various activities to really get a better understanding. And then once that training goes through, you'll really look at your other team members and you'll realize, what's really driving their behavior on the inside, not just what you see on the outside. Because when you have a greater sense of awareness, you know how to adapt your decision making, you know how to adapt your request, you know how to adapt your way of relating and working with others. And when that when you put that in place, it really gives you a better understanding of how to relate to one another. So, for example, now that you know someone is an Earth, you're more inclined to ensure you have the processes and systems in place to really make it easier for that person to really complete that work. And then on the other hand, when you have a real estate agent working for you who's a water, they really value relationships. And when they go out, you really encourage them to really build those connections with their prospects and their buyers and their sellers. And when you have that understanding in place, you're really leveraging other people's strengths to really lean into what they do best. So it's really training other people to see how we make decisions on the inside. And that's really what I value from the behavioral elements assessment.
Oh, I love that. All right, now I have some really great questions off that I'm gonna challenge you on.
Absolutely.
First off, the quote you referenced, "Dig your well before you're thirsty." One of my favorite books and authors is Harvey Mackay, who wrote "Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive." I did a book review on that on one of my podcasts. It was one of my most listened to podcasts. Big fan of Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is all right in your wheelhouse. Big friend of John Wooden from your UCLA, Southern California, won 16 national titles in a row. And I'm actually going to do a podcast about his book because you're right in his wheelhouse there's a story that, UCLA was like the pinnacle of where people would be. And at his first basketball practice, he did an incredible thing. Here he's got all the top high school players that want to play for UCLA, and it's documented in his first practice, he wouldn't have any basketballs. And he would have everyone sit on the floor, and he would spend an entire practice for 3 hours having them put their socks and sneakers on. And the point was, and they were all like, what does this have to do with anything? He said, until you know how to put your socks and sneakers on in the right way, I'm avoiding you getting blisters, because if you have blisters, you will not be able to perform at a high level. So until we get this basic foundation down, we're not going to be able to advance. And then the other great thing that he taught them never to look at the scoreboard. So it kind of goes back to your marathon thing of if they did and trusted the process of all the practice and work they did, they would never need to look at the scoreboard because they'd always be winning, right? So it really makes sense. So back to air, fire, earth, and water, okay? Now, really interesting thing I'm going to throw out to you there. So there's the book, I'm sure you're familiar with all these books. So there's the book Strength Finder, which is probably, 15 years old. And I'm going to use myself as an example. I've had some of the best coaches that made me who I am and a lifelong learner. I also had some not good coaches. And I have great specificity in the things in your assessment that I'm good at and I'm not good at. My best coaches, and I would think of you as one, if they did the right assessment on someone like me, they would focus on developing my strengths. And there's a question in here. And yes, they don't want me to have complete weaknesses and not be unorganized or not be able to function within structure. But they knew if they'd focus on my strength, the ROI on developing a strength would be greater than spending extra time on developing a weakness. So, that being said, question for you. You get into an organization, and let's say you find, you've got the top salesperson, and you've got average salespeople, and then you've got bottom feeders. What do you find? And then there's a leader. So what do you find when you assess those salespeople and you sense that from the manager, that's why they brought you in, you want to make him or her the best they can be? So how do you look at all that and help that manager be the best they can be with all different personality types?
Absolutely. So when it comes to looking at the big picture, you really want to give everyone awareness of, again, what their strengths are. But again, it's important not to brush off or ignore weaknesses. You at least want people to be aware. I mean, to a certain degree, when it comes to looking at our weaknesses, when we have teams, it's possible to have other members complement those weaknesses. But at the same time, you don't want to brush them off completely, and you still want to make an effort into how you can address that. So, for example, let's say we have a manager who is very strong fire, very competitive, low water, and just having those healthy having those conversations, building strong relationships. That's really not their forte. You still want to have them really take opportunities to get to know their employees, because if they completely ignore that weakness, people are going to be turned off, especially the waters in the room who really do value those relationships. You want to really remind the ROI of what it's like to connect with everyone in the room. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but at least it has to be addressed. So for the manager to at least take some time to work on that water part, try to build stronger relationships, at least have conversations. That's really where you'll see value. Also, at the same time, you might have a manager who's strong air. They're very creative, but maybe they're weak earth, not very organized. You walk into the room, they might have just so many files and documents just all over the floor. Of course, you're going to have some earths who walk in and they'll probably scratch their head and get frustrated. Again, if the manager continues to stay like that and really leaves that organization just out of the way, that might frustrate other people, especially the earths in the room. But if you remind the air manager that there is value in really having structure and organization in your work, that will really help other people feel better, especially the earth. So again, when it comes to looking at strengths and weaknesses, yes, leverage the strengths, but if you ignore the weaknesses or brush them aside, that's just going to create more tension. So it's still very important and valuable to address them.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Diving a little deeper, and you're really helping. It's almost like a self-help for me, so I'm being a little bit selfish, but I know this is not just for me. This is a lot of people I know, right? I'll use top sellers as an example, and I'm going to stereotype for a second. So top sellers, of which I would consider myself one, they have fire, right? No doubt. They have water in a way where they can hunt and go start the relationship, and then they can develop the relationship. I will say for myself and others, they are lacking in earth, and their air might be up in the air, okay? So if you're coaching either that seller or that manager, how do you make the seller themselves, who's saying, wait, but I make more sales than anyone, I'm more driven than anyone, I make more sales calls than everyone, my revenue is there, but the papers are all over the floor, the other people in other departments are kind of left to pick up that salesperson's mess, right? And that's not sustainable. And it's bad for the culture of the organization, right? Because you can't just have the seller be the wild, wild west and say, I'm producing revenue, you guys pick up my mess. How do you make that top salesperson want to work on I don't like to call them weaknesses, the areas of development? Because if they don't want to, you're not going to get that net gain.
So when it comes to the top seller, we want to first off congratulate them because they've really hit a significant milestone. It's no small feat to be a top seller. Then when it comes to having the conversation, really telling them that, for example, Mr. Top Seller, imagine what your work and your results would be like if you set up a system and process in place to be much more effective. Imagine that. And then just go through just a different vision of just a greater set of goals and a greater set of accomplishments from really focusing on the areas of development, such a higher ROI, and just taking them through that path of what could be possible. And again, since they're fires, they're really driven. And if they want to accomplish that bigger dream, it's possible if we set those systems and processes in place. And when they see that and really work on really setting that foundation, they'll see a greater sense of ROI. So it's really looking at the big picture and seeing what other returns they're capable of getting when they really bring that big picture together. So that was an excellent question.
Oh man, that's such music to my ears, because the best leaders I've had did exactly what you just said. They opened, and I hope our listeners, if any of you are leaders or people managers or sales managers specifically, and most of mine were really great, the first thing they did that is so often overlooked is salespeople were pretty egotistical, right? Especially the top salespeople. Like, we want to be acknowledged, not just the most compensated, but we need the most pats on the back. We do. I can speak for myself with that. So you nailed it. The first thing anyone I'm going to listen to is going to say, "Wow, I got to compliment you. You're just crushing it. You're responsible for this X revenue. You've grown. You have me now at hello," right? And then if you're to say you're processing, like, well, where do you think your areas of development are? I'll speak for myself and other sellers I know. I would say I am not the greatest, most organized person. I know I could have better systems in place. I know I could have a better CRM. It would probably make me sell more. And I need help. So if you can show me, now that you've complimented me and you're on my side, if you can show me a better way and say, well, imagine, Brian, if you adopted some of these practices, you could probably sell 30% more, right? So that's so brilliant, and you really hit the nail on the head there. So can you give kind of a case study of how you pulled off something like that and what were the end results? Because I noticed, and I said to you, your claim on your site was, by engaging with you in your management consulting, that your average employee productivity and engagement was you could get a company 21% more profitable and 17% more productive. So you'd have me at hello if I was running an organization to hire you. So give us a case study in which you made that happen.
Absolutely. So I was working with a team who, a leadership team fairly new at interacting with each other. They had not taken the behavioral elements assessment yet, so they were really unfamiliar with how they perceive each other. And then I ran a training and really gave a deep dive on really how they can see a bigger picture, how they work individually, and just going through just various activities and looking around the room, seeing in real time how those activities and actions affected them, they really got a really deeper understanding of how it really does have an impact. And after that session was put together, later throughout the day, they just kept talking about the results, how relevant it was to the work they did. And since it was so relevant, they talked about each other's results, and they had a better understanding of how they can adapt to how each other work. And there was just a lighter sense, a lighter mood, just this lighter, uplifting feeling, because it was this insight, that a light bulb that just came to their mind. And with that, it really does increase that sense of enthusiasm for working for each other now, because with that level of activity of understanding, that really give everyone a better sense of how they can work well with each other. So really, it's that awareness of self and others. And when you put those two together, when you see that alignment, it makes it really easier to have people get a better appreciation for how each other works. Again, some participants just might have an element that contrasts with other people, but when you see how it all flows together, you'll at least gain a better appreciation of how everyone can connect better.
I love that. So walk me to the particulars of, okay, so, company X hires you, and I'm sure there's many different ways that they can work with you. What are sort of the ways, like, I'm guessing you could come in and do a 1-day seminar, you could do a 3-day a week, like, what's the offering, if you will, or the whole, the packages that you could offer a company?
So there are two ways. One is the training path. You can bring me for a day. What we'll do is we'll look at the values that the organization is trying to promote. So is it communication? Is it better teamwork? Is it time management? Then I'll look through my library of different activities, and then I'll look for the relevant ones that really do promote those values, because I want to ensure that what you're striving for really does align with what you're promoting to your team. The other part is a more end-to-end program where I really want to build a more effective team from the ground up. So again, with the 3 phases I shared earlier, there's that leadership development where you're gaining a better understanding and awareness of self and others. So when you lead yourself better, you can lead others better. Next part is that HR strategy. I want to make sure when you look at your hiring processes, your training processes, your onboarding processes, it's all aligned with what your organization stands for. Again, it's that culture fit, because when you bring in the right people, reminds me of the book from Jim Collins, Good to Great, having the right people in the right seats on the right bus. Because if you're filling your organization with the wrong people, that really does have a damaging effect on the bottom line. Because once you introduce either disengaged or toxic people to your team, it really does, the feeling does extend out. And again, you want to make sure you have the right people on the right seats. And third part is that team building. So again, I'll look for different activities or different seminars and trainings that I can put together to really get everyone on the same page, because it really is important to be intentional about that team building part. Because if you're sitting back and wishing, hoping, and praying that your team is always on the same page, it doesn't work that way. We really do need to put in the time and effort to ensure everyone's working toward the same goal at the right place and at the right time.
I love that. And how do you, talk about SMART goals, right? These are measurable, they're actionable. How do you track, okay, so I hire you, company hires you and says, okay, here's where we are. And by the time, we're going to pay you X. And by the time you leave or finish, that you're able to show them a tangible, we talked about 20%, 21% more profitable, 17% more productive. How do you help the company measure that success? So then, of course, the greatest prospecting tool is referrals. right? So you hire, you're hired at owning the goal, and you go through my process or my companies, and I come out at the end and I'm like, wow, how did we measure that you were 21% more, made us 21% more profitable and 17% more productive? So that I say to the next company, if you bring this guy in and his team, this is what they're going to do for you.
Absolutely. So actually, great question. When it comes to the full framework, at the beginning, the leadership and the assessments, I do have assessment that's related to these different areas. So we'll measure at the beginning, do some pulse surveys in the middle, just to ensure we're on track. But over time, when we look at the results and measure again, you'll see how progress is looking. So again, yes, I do have different assessments that I'll pull together. So that way we're actually seeing measurable progress toward our goals.
And then you'll come out in the end, and I guess they'll have an end report and say, this is what we did. Are you satisfied? Because that was my promise to you. And then therefore you hope for the referrals, that are going to go off of there.
That's right. And then there will be other scorecards as well. So there will be a variety of things we measure.
Okay. And now, have you brought, you have such a great system, and so complimentary to you. Have you brought on other people on your staff so you can extend, your revenue streams?
That's the goal. That's the goal.
That's
So,
the goal. That's the goal.
Actually, as you mentioned at the very beginning, the goal for 2 to 3 years ahead, it is my goal to bring in more people to really extend this work.
Right. Because now people are buying, I've known a lot of people in my world, that when we kind of age out, and you're a young man, as we age out of being able to just be boots on the ground as sellers, we become sales trainers and company trainers because we have the experience and the wisdom. So I would imagine, you training the people, right? Because most people, you're the star of the show, right, are going to want you, but you can't grow the business if it's just you, right? So you're going to need to develop some young trainers in there. So that's great. I loved your stat, and then as we're going to head towards the end and have talked about how people can get in touch with you and engage with you. So I found there was one great point you put up, and you noted, and I guess talk to us a little about this, because this is startling. You put down that 60%, up to 60% of employees are disengaged at work. If I owned a company and you told me 60% of my people were disengaged at work, A, I'd want you to qualify that, and B, I would be in shock. So how have you figured that out?
So it is interesting because when we look at today's workforce, just looking at different research, especially with Gallup, what we're looking at is a manager does play a significant role in the employee experience. And what I'm realizing is that based on the research that I've seen, when employees do not feel that appreciation, that recognition, and you brought that up earlier during a conversation with the top seller, they'll really feel this sense of lost enthusiasm, because people do want to feel recognized. They want to feel that their work does matter. And another part of this level of disengagement is when we're looking at remote and hybrid work, we're seeing this sense of isolation and disconnection. And it's becoming all the more important for leaders to be, again, a very key word that I use a lot when talking about leadership, intentional. Leaders need to be more intentional about connecting with their employees, because this sense of feeling isolated, people feel more like silos now. And really, to break that wall, leaders should put in the time and effort to check in. So for example, when a leader has a call or meeting with one of their employees, it really does add value to say, hey, Brian, how's your day going? I know you have other tasks. We'll get to that during our call, but I really want to know how you're doing. How was your weekend? How was your family? What big updates do you have personally? Really love to hear that. When a manager or leader has that type of conversation, it really does break that wall and restores that sense of connection. And when we just look at those different trends, the reason people feel this sense of disconnection is because of those reasons. Another reason is that fit between what the employee is working toward and what the organization stands for. There are employees who are just there for the paycheck. But again, on the other hand, there are employees who really have that fire to stand up for what the organization stands for because that organization has a really big mission. And when you have that big why, that big vision, that really does increase that level of engagement. So it's a variety of different factors. And when I look at those different ones, it really is part of that employee experience. And when we take that time to improve those key areas, that's where you'll see higher levels of disengagement.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and I'm imagining, what I've seen. I'm 57 years old. I've seen as the industry has changed so much. Back in the day, when I was in my 20s, you generally, you stayed at a place for 5+ years, right? 20 somethings, it's 2 years, and then they get a 10% offer to go somewhere else, and they leave. And 30 somethings, it adds a little bit more. 40 somethings, now I'm in my 50s. If I'm interviewing at a place, I'm like, I want a home. I'm tired of bouncing around. Like, I want to know, and I want to help you build because I want to work at a place for five years. So I'm imagining across the board, have to look at how do you keep the 20 something motivated so that maybe they'll stay for 5 years. And I think all the things I was reading about, I love your tagline, company, it's static, it's blurry, but company culture consultant, helping you build effective workplace teams. So powerful, because I think it's a really unique selling proposition, that you're selling that, because it doesn't seem like it's tangible, but you've made it so tangible even during this discussion. So I really appreciate that. The word intentional, if there's one thing I'm going to take away from this entire discussion in my life, is being more intentional about everything I do, right? So with my children, with my life partner, with my business, with my cat, it sounds easy, but it requires some effort. So that would be me summarizing one key point. I'd welcome, as we're winding this down, and thanking you so much for your time and all this information, is, absolutely, I'm going to promote this when we launch our podcast, but how do people get in touch with you? How do they engage with you and get to working with you?
Absolutely. So one of the ways is through my website, familyconsulting.com. And I do have a complimentary gift there, and it is the Behavioral Elements Assessment. I encourage everyone to take it. There's no cost to the assessment on that website. It really gives you a better understanding of where your strengths lie. Again, when it comes to behavioral assessment, it measures what drives you on the inside instead of these traditional personality-based assessments. So you really get a better understanding of how you make decisions. Another way to reach me is through LinkedIn, Jessper Maquindang. Feel free to connect. Love to have conversations about leadership, team development, and culture. So feel free to reach out. Love those conversations.
You got it. Will you be running any more marathons?
Oh, absolutely. That's on my
Really?
list. Yeah, it's a yes for me. That sense of drive, I feel that fire within me.
When's the next one you're targeting?
For me, I grew up in the city of Santa Clarita in Southern California. So my hometown marathon is my go-to. So that'll be later this year in the fall, and I'm looking
Wow.
forward to it.
Wow. Are you in the midst of training now, I'm guessing?
Getting to it. So ramping up again.
Getting to it. My days of marathoning are unfortunately over. As you get older, the knees go, and it's really impressive what you've done. And Jessper, besides thanking you so much, we talked a little bit about in closing, and we thank the listeners so much for tuning into this conversation. I hope they got as much as certainly I did out of this, and Jesper's real great wisdom at such a young age and what he shared with you. What would you say, somebody's tuning in and, in general, people forget 90% of what they walk away from when they turn off the episode. What would be the one real thing that you'd want people and leaders, and companies want to walk away from all the wisdom and the teachings that you give?
Absolutely. There is one thing that I do want to share. But before I do get to that, there were three key points that I wanted to get back
Sure.
to based on the conversation we had. Really enjoyed our conversation. The first part is I like how you brought up the example of John Wooden, where they would put their socks and shoes on. Reminds me of recent conversations I've had with black belt martial artists, and they would tell me they would still work on white belt fundamentals, and I would ask myself, why? They're at the black belt level. Why go back to white belt basics? And I realized, just like John Wooden, it's really those foundational skills that really do keep you at your most optimal level. When you get the basics down, everything else becomes much more effective and efficient. So focus on the basics. The second part is when it comes to goal setting, there's a quote that I like from Simon Sinek, and he was the author of Start With Why. But I'm paraphrasing a quote, but it really inspires me. It's when it comes to goal setting, when you know the why of what you do, everything becomes easier. So know your why, especially when it comes to my journey, reflecting back on becoming a marathon runner. My why is to show that I was capable of doing one. That was a big why to me at the time. And it's still a big why to me because of, what I've had as a child growing up with asthma. And then having that strong why really pushes you forward. And again, just like I told myself during my marathon race, trust your training. And that doesn't just apply to running, but whatever you do in life, trust the time and effort that you put into something. If you keep going to something, if you keep doing it, once you reach that finish line, you'll just experience that sense of joy. And Brian, as you said, when you cross that finish line of your marathon, it really just proved to yourself how much was possible. And then third thing I'd like to share is there's a quote from John Maxwell that really inspires my leadership journey. And he said, when you help other people grow and develop, it brings a sense of joy and enthusiasm. And I'm paraphrasing there, but helping others really does make you feel better. So when it comes to leadership, promote that growth in others. And the big takeaway that I want to share with everyone is that culture matters. Culture really does matter. When you reflect on the leadership within an organization, when you reflect on how your team works together, when it's flowing well, you'll just see a greater sense of engagement, productivity, and an impact to the bottom line. On the other hand, when you have toxicity or just an unhealthy or tense work environment, it makes it much more difficult to get work done. But on the other hand, again, when we're intentional about how we build our culture, our team, our organization, and we want it to be healthy, focused on the mission, the vision, our values, when people see that, they know they have something to stand for. And that really builds a great place to work.
Oh, so well said. So well said. And I'm gonna, when I replay and listen to this episode as I do, I've written down so many names. I need to pick up the book, Start With Why, get John Maxwell. I haven't looked at that in a while. Jim Collins, Good to Great. I know of these books, but I need to put them in my library. So thank you so much for that. And you've done so more than I could have possibly asked with really bringing home to light, what is the goal of the podcast. So, Jessper, thank you so much for the time. I truly appreciate it. Send some warmth and sunshine this way, if you would, especially on this Memorial Day weekend. And I truly appreciate it. And we appreciate you, the listeners, for taking the time out of your day to give your time to us, the most valuable resource that you could ever bring. Our value exchange is you walked away with something. We're inspired. We're motivated to help someone else, to send this episode to somebody that you think would benefit from it. You can catch us on all our favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, and also YouTube, where Jessper and I consider ourselves very charismatic people. So we hope you like to watch the episode itself, and we'll be promoting it on social media and whatnot, and certainly connect with Jessper on LinkedIn. We'll put that all in the show notes. So that being said, Jessper, thank you so very much for sharing your resource of time and all the wisdom, and I hope lots of listeners come over to your platform. So
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone.
you're very, very welcome. So thank you. It's been another episode of Owning the Goal, where success in sales is success in life. If you'd like to be on the program, and I could be so lucky as I got with Jessper today, you can go to our website, owningthegoal.com. You'll get this content on there. If you want to be on and contact me directly, it's brian@owningthegoal.com. And until next time, thank you much, listeners, and have a wonderful time whenever we publish this episode. So we really appreciate it.